Today I'm making a Mediterranean dish. Okay, it's not food, but it is a coffee table and it will have islands. A client from Hawaii sent me his own mango hardwood slabs and asked me to do something I've never tried before, which was to somehow transform them into a group of islands floating in resin. Using electricity, I started to burn away the majority top surface of the wood, creating deep, wide channels. I added in a second slab to create more separation between the islands so that they're not all clustered together. I didn't have an epoxy mold that would fit this diameter, so I made one out of vinyl baseboard and sealed it up with silicone. It wasn't a perfect circle, but I did have an extra inch so that I could trim it later on. Normally, working with water features, the client will ask for a blue resin, but he threw a twist at me and asked for red, which piqued my interest and something I wanted to see. I mixed up a base red epoxy out of 7 different micropowders and then started pouring. I didn't want to be just one bland color of red, which is why I mixed in so many shades of pigments. I also mixed up 3 separate batches of resin, each being a lighter or darker color of the base red. Deep pour resin is a much thinner liquid than your average epoxy, and the mica powders tend to settle more towards the bottom and separate out as it cures. So after I add in all the separate batches of red, I come back and manually mix it up before it turns to a solid, and that way I can keep a unique design that doesn't fade away. I also thought it might be interesting to leave about a 1/4 inch of clearance between the base resin and the top surface and fill that in with clear resin so that it gives the effect of the islands floating. It took about a week for it to cure until I could pop it off a pour table and start surfacing it flat. This removes any excess resin on top and also any of the charred wood areas to expose more of the mango. I used a hand router jig to trim it into a circle and then started sanding all the way from 80 grit to 400. Even with a brand new sanding disc, epoxy powder can gum up your sandpaper fast, so I clean it off in between passes. I gave it a 1/4 inch bevel on the edges, both top and bottom, using a hand router. I raised the grain using water and then sand it back down to 400 grit so that it's not rough when I apply the finish. I'm using an oil and wax combination that I'll apply 3 to 4 coats. I love this type of finish because it protects the wood long term but also keeps it looking natural with only a dull sheen. By adding 4 coats, it's thick enough that I can come back and wet sand and polish the resin areas without sanding through the finish into the wood. By polishing out the resin, it makes it high gloss in contrast to the matte wood, which really makes it come alive. It also makes it crystal clear so you can see down into the fine details of the resin art. If you'd like to learn more on how I made this table, there is a detailed video up on my YouTube channel at Jeremy Elkins. This is the first time I've done islands before, and it went great. But now I'm thinking somebody should order a dining room table so we can see what that looks like. If you're interested, just reach out through my email.